Hi, everybody. This is Nadia Lutz. I'm a traditional naturopath, and I also practice functional neurology, among other things. I do a lot of work with quantum frequency and love to open up different discussions and use a variety of different tools. Today, we're going to be talking about Lyme, viruses, and co-infections. Um, I was diagnosed with Lyme in 2001 and no one could help me. I went to NeuroLyme because I used frequencies in the wrong way. So I thought I had to go back to school, get all sorts of information and learn things. So I thought I would open it up and try to help other people as well. I do a lot in my practice. And the very first phase of, when I say Lyme, it's a very wide thing. It's viruses, co-infections, autoimmune diseases. It's basically, it can be treated the same way. So we'll be talking about that today. Just a disclaimer, this is not medical advice. This is just for educational purposes only. All this information is just for education. If you have any specific questions, please refer to your healthcare provider. The legal stuff we have to say. What are quantum tools? Some things we'll be talking about today. They're tools that will allow the body to optimize and heal itself. Any tools that increase the immune system, optimize the cells, and also tools that give us information so then we can make lifestyle changes and do some things. And it basically helps the imbalance in the human body. So those are kind of the quantum tools we're going to be using. It's interesting because according to the BMJ Global Health, they said only 14% of the world population has been affected by Lyme. Now, in my practice, I use testing, and I find that most people have viruses and bacteria that are connected to Lyme, co-infections, and everything. I would say up to 95% of people are affected, and people I see. Granted, the population I see, people are desperate. They kind of find me when they've been to every practitioner and they just don't know where else to go. So it's a little bit skewed. But I thought it was also interesting that Litsi the Iceman, he was discovered in 1991. He died 5,300 years ago in the Eastern Alps. And they found that he actually has Borrelia, Burgdorferi Lyme, which is pretty incredible that even back then they found tattoos on the back of his legs, and they believe that that was to try to help with the arthritis from the Lyme and other things as well. So I thought that was interesting. Now, there are so many different symptoms of Lyme. It affects all organs, headache, brain fog, speech issues, vision issues, fatigue. You can just go on and on and on. Bladder problem, difficulty breathing. It's the great mimicker. It can mimic almost any disease there is. People who are desperate are often told they have multiple sclerosis, that they may have Alzheimer's. People are told things that, and when they're not even really diagnosing the actual cause and one of the roots of it. So it's important we kind of discuss it. Now, there are 3 stages of Lyme disease. Stage 1 is the localized Lyme disease. It hasn't really spread through the body. And if you can catch it early, if you've been bitten by, we'll talk a little bit about what you are bitten by, but if you find a rash and you have an insect bite, any insect bite, act on it. Take herbals, do things, some of the things we'll talk about. Stage 2, it's already kind of spreading through the body. It's a little bit more challenging. And then stage 3, it's gone to the joints, it's gone to the nerves, and that's kind of late Lyme. So we'll kind of talk, it's important to know there's stage 1, 2, and 3. So the majority of patients with chronic Lymes report that they have 2 or more co-infections, right? They can be Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, Mycoplasma. It can be many other things other than these, but usually Lyme comes as a package. It's not just one thing, right? There are many, many things that are involved with Lyme and viruses and co-infections. Here are some other names for things. We have Rocky Mountain spotted fever, we have Powassan virus, we have tick-borne bacteria, tularmia, they have tick paralysis, babesiosa, just lots of different names for different types of vectors and pathogens. Now, it can be transmitted, like I said, by any biting insect. Mites, fleas, mosquitoes, spiders. Typically, we only think of this as a tick issue, but I don't know anyone who's never been bitten by a mosquito. It can be spread sexually transmitted through saliva, semen, any bodily fluid. It can also pass down from mother to baby. I see this all the time in my scans. So that's why I think that this great imitator, this chronic illness, what can be a chronic illness, is much more widespread than we think. Now, it's pretty difficult to get a positive Western blot test, an ELISA test. And the reason that is sometimes there's not a one-to-one correlation when you get bit and actually when you think you have Lyme. Sometimes it's months afterwards. It's already gone to stage 2, stage 3. And depending on when they test, the Lyme and the pathogens may be in different various stages. It may be in the egg producing stage, or it may be in the, the nymph stage, and it only appears at certain stages. Another interesting thing is that when the United States government decided to make a vaccine for Lyme, they made it, they released it, and they were having a problem because even though people were getting this vaccine, people were still testing positive for Lyme. So what they did is they took out the titers that actually figure out if you have Lyme or not. They took them out of the ELISA and the Western blot test. And later they had to recall the vaccinations, but they never put those back in. So that's another reason why it's so difficult to get a positive test from a traditional test for Lyme disease. The two labs that if people insist on getting it, and I did in 2001, I spent $15,000 getting various blood tests to prove that I had Lyme. And I'm not exactly sure why I did that. I guess I didn't know enough information because I wasn't going to go on 6 months of antibiotics even at that time. But the two labs that I do like the most are IGeneX and Vibrant Labs for the blood Lyme tests. Now I use a few different bioresonance devices, but one of the reasons I love it is that this is an example of some of the reports that comes out that can help me determine whether Lyme is affecting someone's health. It's not a medical device, but it gives so much information. And what's really interesting is these tests come and go. Like on this test, you can see that the person tested double red for Lyme, right? Well, the next day, they may be double green, or they may have one red. This is why it's so difficult to determine whether someone has Lyme by a blood test, because I see these tests day to day and they vary. They vary completely. Lyme hides so well. They love to hide in cranial nerves, the viruses and bacteria. And the reason they do that is they're encapsulated in a fluid and they're less likely to die if someone introduces herbs or antibiotics or heat or something like that. So it's I love these bioresonance tests because it just gives you so much information. It happens in 3 minutes, and it's a fraction of the cost that what it normally is. Now, a lot of reasons why people do not see progress when treating Lyme is they don't go in these order of operations, right? It's really critical that the first thing you do is open up your drainage pathways. And then you can talk about parasites, then you can talk about molds and metals. Then finally, you can get to the Lyme co-infections and viruses, and then you rebuild the body. So in 2001, I didn't know any better, right? I got a Rife machine and I just started killing the Lyme. I thought, okay, this is what you do. I read a book and said, this is what you do. These are the frequencies you press out. And Lyme went up to my brain. All of a sudden, I was putting keys in the refrigerator. I almost lost vision out of one of my eyes. It was terrible. I just didn't know these order of operations. So after lots of education and working with a lot of people, this is the correct protocol that I believe. And we're going to spend most of the rest of today talking about drainage. I'll introduce some other things, but it's really critical. And whether we're talking again about Lyme or autoimmune or any chronic illness, this is the number one thing that you want to address first. So here's some questions. If you answer yes to any of these, chances are your drainage pathways are a little stagnant. Do you have difficulty sweating? Do you have less than 1 bowel movement per day? Do you have swelling, inflammation, or water retention? Do you wake up in the middle of the night between 1 and 4 a.m.? Do you have acne, eczema, or rashes? Do you experience fatigue or brain fog? Or are you sensitive to lights or sounds? So If you answered yes to any of those, chances are you need to work on some of the things we're talking about. It's kind of like a funnel, right? If the funnel is not open and you just keep putting more and more things in there, it'll back up, and the toxins from the bacteria, the virus, the parasites, and everything will move upstream. They'll move up to your brain, they'll move up to your organs, and you'll get some pretty bad symptoms. Symptoms will get worse. So this is one of the main reasons we want to open up these drainage pathways. So these are the areas we'll be talking about. Colon, kidneys, liver, lymph, and skin. For all of these, I use frequency right away. For colon, it's critical that you're pooping after every meal. Like within 20 to 30 minutes, you need to poop. If you have a decent amount of food going in, it should be coming out. If it's not, you need to introduce some sort of bowel movement. You can, smooth move tea or licorice root, anything to get the movement. You can take magnesium. You can rub magnesium on your stomach. You can do enemas. You definitely also want to make sure that you stay hydrated, right? For kidneys, I love to use frequency for kidneys. We do some kidney and liver support. I love using terahertz or red light therapy because the terahertz penetrates 7 to 12 inches. We'll talk a little bit more about terahertz later. And then for liver, frequency, TUDCA, castor oil packs are great. Glutathione, bitters, coffee enemas again. Once those kidneys and liver are opening up, you can also do a flush, but you wouldn't want to do a flush before things are open. Lymphatic system, it's really critical. All of our heart and our lungs, they have a built-in pump, but our lymphatic system does not. So what happens with people with chronic illness is they get fatigue and they don't like to move. The parasites actually prevent them from moving a little bit because if they, when at 105, the parasites, bacteria, and virus start dying off. So they start sending off toxins so that people don't want to move. So you need to move in some way, whether it's a massage or lymphatic support, or you're on a vibration plate. But movement is critical. And it's kind of that, it's really difficult because people who have chronic illness, they don't want to move, right? So, but it is part of the critical process. And then skin, it's the largest organ in our body. Frequency works fabulous on it, but typically if you are getting eczema and acne and rashes, it really means your digestive pathways need to open up. So you can use dry brushing, you can use gua sha. Infrared sauna is a little bit tricky with Lyme because since they do die off at 105, it can cause some problems. When I first got an infrared sauna, I could only go in for 4 minutes. So it's one of these things you want to work up slowly. And then, of course, you want to do non-toxic products. So here are the things I look for on my bioresonance device. It's just a handheld scanner. It's super easy to use, but it tells all about the digestive function. A lot of people that have chronic illness and Lyme and viruses and parasites can see on the far left, they're not producing enough hydrochloric acid in their stomach. So their stomach is too alkaline. And then when the food hits, it starts to ferment. And virus, parasites, and bacteria love alcohol in the gut, right? They're just down there living high on the hog. And they'll block things up and cause all sorts of problems. So when you introduce digestive acid enzymes, when the food hits your stomach, you start to digest it right away, and your body can then absorb the nutrients from the food. A lot of people that have these chronic issues, your body actually thinks you're starving it because the food is going to the viruses and the parasites and the bacteria. Because of these blockages and not pulling things out, it's very common for people with Lyme to have food intolerances. So this bioresonance device gives us a ton of information. Without this, I'd be sending people out for an LCAT test, which is $950, which would be telling you which foods may be causing inflammation. Meats, dairy, gluten, big problems, and nuts and seeds and legumes. Because if it's not acidic, they'll sit there. A parasite will wrap itself around a tiny piece of nut, a tiny piece of meat, and be able to live on it for a month, right? So we really need to masticate our food really, really well to the point of mush. and then introduce those digestive acid enzymes so that it just digests right away. And again, you'd want to avoid food intolerances. It's not necessarily an allergy. It's not like peanuts where you're going to have an anaphylactic situation, but intolerance is more, it's causing inflammation in the gut. We're trying to reduce that. So one of the other pathways I have to open up are the kidney. Kidneys are very common to be an issue, and then they form all sorts of stones and things like that. So after you open up the colon and you're pooping, then we can kind of address this more, but it works really well with frequencies. And then liver is a big issue with Lyme, same reason as the kidney. These two organs I tend to work on after, again, once you start pooping after every meal, then we dive down into kidneys and liver a little bit more. So it's kind of like the second stage of the digestive pathways opening. Here's a little bit on the lymphatic. You can see how those green lines, it's just all through the torso, goes all the way down through the arms and the legs as well. But if you're doing your dry brushing or you're doing your tapping, you just tap all those areas and massage it out. That's one way to do the lymphatic system. If you can't really move that much, just walking up and down stairs, or even just bouncing in a chair. You want to just get that lymph moving. One of the things we have with our bioresonance device is, you can see to the right, it gives me a lot of information talking about different areas to improve. Like in this case, it was increased hydration, trace minerals, exercise, support the immune system, and lymphatic massage. And then we can also see up above that, talking about different causes. And you can see how there are other viruses that are being activated because of that Lyme. We talked about skin a little bit. Here's another example of what I see. We're going to talk a little bit more about emotions, but I do like this scan because it really gives the different emotions that are involved in it also, and then you can easily delete those emotions. And it's important that you reduce your heavy metal toxicity, very important. While it's not necessarily in that first stage of drainage, you have to look at the air, water, and soil. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to address detoxing Lyme without also addressing the heavy metal toxicity. The scan will identify different heavy metals that are activated, and we just have to figure out what it's coming from. Our soil is not the same anymore. Our soil has a lot of heavy metal. The air has tons. Our fruit, our veggies, our animals that are growing up, they're just surrounded by heavy metals. And then you also have, you have paint and things like that you'd have to address. So it's important to get rid of, mercury and lead. And then mold. You also have to address any mold issues, because Lyme and mold often go hand in hand. It's impossible to fully heal from Lyme unless you also address mold and make some lifestyle changes if you're around there. They cause all sorts of symptoms, from shortness of breath, dizziness, brain fog. But Borrelia loves to be in mold. They just go crazy in mold. So it's really important to address it, whether it's in your car, whether it's in your walls or underneath the sink, or washing machine's a big one, especially front loaders. If you do have a washing machine that's a front loader, you can replace that gasket regularly, like once a year. You can put 35% vinegar in there and open up the drawer that has where you put the detergent. So just leave it open, never leave it closed, but mold has to be addressed. Now, another reason I like this bioresonance device is not only does it identify various molds, but you can send mold detox playlists to an area. So for instance, when we were staying at a beach house, it had a musty smell where we were doing our laundry. So I took a picture of the laundry room and I sent mold fungus detox to that room. and the smell just went away. So you can actually send it not only to a person, but you can send it to a place as well. And then it also tells you, one of the scans, it tells you how many years it's been, if it's causing low function or high inflammation. So it's really, really valuable information. And then you can dive down through muscle testing. One of these things, I think 2 or 3 out. I think next time we're going to deal with emotions, and the one after that, we're going to deal with muscle testing, because we do have the best ability to muscle test. That's the best quantum tool we have, is our ability to ask yes, no questions and to receive answers. So that's how I dive down and find out where the mold exposure is, by muscle testing. So all this being said, it's crucial to understand Lyme disease before just going in to kill it, right? And that could be killing it with antibiotics, herbs, whatever you're doing. If you go to a doctor, chances are, if they finally get a test after thousands of dollars that says you do have it, they're going to put you on antibiotics. And then it's going to morph and or go up to the brain, and you'll have some extreme die-off reactions. So you want to make sure you work with a skilled practitioner. If you're dealing with severe Lyme, you just can't go taking a dart and throwing it and start killing. It'll get worse. Now, engaging the vagus nerve in the fight against Lyme is so, so important. This vagus nerve starts from the brainstem, you can see from the photo, and attaches to all of our major organs, ends at the pelvic floor. And it's associated whether you're going to be in rest and digest or you're in fight or flight. I would say 95% of people who are in chronic Lyme, they're in that stage of they're just trying to figure it out. They feel terrible. They're in fight or flight. It's very difficult for someone who has an autoimmune disease or has been sick for so long to get out of that, but it's critical. It's really, really critical, because it's hard to heal when your vagus nerve is not functioning. It's attached to all your other cranial nerves. So you need your body to be in rest and digest. On my YouTube channel, I have 4 weeks of vagus nerve work that build on each other. So you can go out there and you can look at it, and you can do week 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's very simple, easy things like humming, tapping, singing, using essential oils, using a vibrating toothbrush, but it makes your brain pay attention, and it allows you to get into rest and digest. The bioresonance machine we have also, it produces these MP3 songs, and you can listen to those. And I find when you do that in combination with the vagus nerve work, it works really, really well. And you can also pop on these color glasses. This is one of the reports. So this identified, based on a person's voice, self-critical versus self-accepting. And it found the magenta color would be a good combo for that. So they could be putting the magenta glasses on while they're doing that vagus nerve work and listening to the healing MP3. It works fabulous. Now, we can't talk about Lyme without talking about cranial nerves, right? Because Lyme loves to hide up in the cranial nerves. It's safe from a lot of things up there. And you have to remember that Lyme, when I say Lyme, again, it's a big umbrella, right? It's Lyme, viruses, parasites, co-infections. Their number one goal is to thrive. And their second number one goal is to keep you down-regulated. They don't want you thriving. They want you living because you're the host, but they don't want you out there exercising, going full bore and feeling great. They want you like low, 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 low. And they do this by going into the cranial nerves and making it difficult to see. A lot of people, they'll start getting ocular migraines or difficult to swallow. Chagas disease lives there. And so you'll get these weird swallowing things. And so they just go into these cranial nerves and just kind of down regulate you. So I like this, again, I like this bioresonance device because it optimizes your cranial nerves every day. And we have to talk about omega-3s when we talk about cranial nerves, because it's a slip and slide of omega-3s on the cranial nerves. So by doing a high dose of omega-3s, it makes it difficult for all of these little parasites and bacteria and viruses to live up there. So you might want to consider supplementing with the high quality omega-3s. I talked a little bit about the terahertz penetration. I love to use my device to get it out of the eyes, ears, nose, and throat. I have a video I'll show on the next slide, but basically you take this and you just blow up the nose. It goes right to the brainstem. You close your eyes and you blow on the eyes. You get the ears, and then you get the throat as well. And that helps keep it out of the brain, because after you open up those digestive pathways, that's the next goal is to get it out of the brain. This is out there on, you can look it up on my YouTube channel. It's called Terahertz Neuro Reset Tips. It's like a 20-minute video, and it goes into a little bit more depth: eyes, ears, nose, and throat. It just takes the viruses and helps get it out of your brain, which is super important. Oops. So this bioresonance device, it gathers tons of information for 3 minutes. You can do daily scans. You can send all this information to it, and it's $149 a month for unlimited people. So you can help your whole family, your friends, and everything. It's just really fabulous. If you haven't had a remote scan, you reach out, and I will. I'll send one to you. So it's all remote, so you can check it out and check out your food sensitivities. And then it also has this different bacteria hits. It's interesting because this person, you can see that Borrelia was causing high inflammation 33% of the time for 2 years. And then also rickettsia, a Lyme cofactor, was causing low function. This was of the heart, 51% of the time for 1 year. So this person has had it for 1 or 2 years, hasn't had it a super long time, yet it's affecting their heart between 30 and 50%, right? So it's interesting. It's interesting for me to track these things and see how quickly it gets into the organs and causes high inflammation or low function. Oops. So some homeopathy for Lyme and co-infections. I like 2 things. As soon as I've gotten bit by a mosquito, any biting insect whatsoever, because I've had Lyme, any little amount that gets deposited into my body, I'm more likely, the viruses will be more likely to be reactivated, right? So I like to take the Lidum. It's more of a preventative, and it works fabulous. I take it every 3 hours for the first day, and 1 dose twice a day for a week. And then after that, like twice weekly, you just kind of like taper it off. So I pretty much do this all summer because I live in a very hot, humid area. And if for some reason I'm at the beach or I'm somewhere and I got bit by a lot of mosquitoes or a lot of sand fleas or whatever, and I'm just like get real itchy and I'm puffy, then I will take both Lidum and Aurum together at the same time and do it. So this is pretty much what I do all summer, especially because I like to spend a lot of time outside. But these 2 are fabulous for kind of keeping things at bay. So I would tuck that into your arsenal. Now here, for people who have the scanner, you can just take a screenshot of this. These are some of the things that I use with the scanner. I look at all of these things in the vitals, pretty much look at the whole thing, but definitely bacteria, viruses, vagus nerve, food intolerances, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, body systems. I listen to the inner voice 1 to 2 times per day. Quantum reach, I love all of them. Quantum frequency, it really depends on what the symptoms are, but definitely nerve inflammation, nerve stimulator, chronic fatigue. I love using Queen's blood plasma because all of these viruses, all viruses, make the blood real sludgy. So Clean's blood plasma is really nice under quantum frequency. Persistent disorders is also really good. I have some quantum flowers there you can make. You can make the homeopathics. I actually make the homeopathics in a spray that I was just talking about. And I also make them in the pills, right? So I have a big jar with a spray on it. And every time I get a mosquito bite, we just kind of like spray around. It's all natural. It's just frequencies of homeopathics. And then of course you can use the Bach flowers as well. For the quantum energetics on a regular basis with Lyme people, I do cerebral detox, Epstein-Barr detox, because that tends to be reactivated with Lyme. Lyme detox, bacteria detox, candida detox. We didn't talk a little bit about that at all, but that's very common with people in Lyme. Mold fungus detox, trace minerals, and ultimate emotions. So those are all great. And then I also go in, depending on where people are finding symptoms, eyes, ears, nose, and throat, or organs, and I'll do a comprehensive scan specifically on those areas. So it just gives it more support. And here are some playlists that I like. Again, I usually muscle test all of these for people, but this is a brain neuro detox that works great. Lymphatic that works great. Here's a good one for constipation. Again, you want a muscle test to make sure. Here's an overall Lyme playlist. And I think that's it for my formal presentation. I'm going to stop the share. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to pause the recording too for a question.